Hello, everyone. This is Josh Bersin from the Josh Bersin Company. I'm a global industry analyst, and I'm here with Kathi Enderes, our Vice President of Research. Hey, Kathi.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Josh. Kathi Enderes. I'm the Vice President of Research with the Josh Bersin Company, and I lead a team of researchers and analysts that do research and analysis on all sorts of topics of HR and leadership and learning and development and employee experience and HR technology.
We're going to talk today about the employee experience market, a little bit about the role of Viva, and what you can do to understand and improve your employee experience in your company. We're all going through one of the most stressful and uncertain times in business, and every employee, regardless of their role, is dealing with the pandemic, digital transformation of various different types, hybrid work, remote work. And now added to that is this incredibly hot job market where upwards of 30 to 40% of employees are leaving roles, leaving professions. And in April of this year, 4 million people voluntarily quit, and a third of them did not have another job. So it's a very, very dynamic job market, which means that if you're not taking good care of your people, you could be losing them. Or it might be hard to attract them. And of course, all of the best practices in how to manage a remote or hybrid workforce are still sort of being invented. And so we're in an iterative process. Now, the thing that we did, we worked with Microsoft for many months on a pretty significant research project to understand this. And let Kathi tell you a little bit about the project, and then we'll tell you about the findings. Kathi, why don't you talk about the research?
Yeah, that's great, Josh. So the way that we looked at employee experience is really, really broad. It's not just about technology, not just about journeys or moments that matter. We really see employee experience very, very broadly. It's about the work that you do. It's about how your manager performs towards you, how they develop you, how they coach you. It's about the physical, the digital, and the cultural workplace that you work in. It's about your health and well-being. And of course, the pandemic brought that up really as a significant topic. It's also about how I can grow in this company, how much I can develop in this company, and then it's how much I can trust the organization. And then, of course, there's all these technologies and services that go underneath that to make it all happen. So the way that we went about this research is we developed together with Microsoft, based on many, many conversations with HR leaders and IT leaders and employee experience leaders across the globe, we developed a very broad survey of 83 organizational practices. And we got almost 1,000 companies participating in this survey to understand what of all the things that you can do in employee experience really, really matter to, of course, engagement and retention of your people, but then also to business outcomes like financial performance and customer satisfaction, and to innovation outcomes like change adaptability and innovating effectively. So we really want you to understand what of all these things matters most. Because one of the questions that we always hear when we talk with employee experience leaders, IT leaders, HR leaders is, where do I start? If there's so many things to consider, where do I start and what matters most? And so when we set out to do this study, we identified what actually matters most of all these dimensions and all these practices and all these elements of employee experience that you can focus on. And what we identified in the study is what really matters most is, can the employee trust the organization? Do they feel included? Do they feel like the company cares for them? Do they feel like the company invests in them to develop and grow continuously? Those are the things that actually matter most.
So let me ask you about that for a second. So we looked at 83 practices across 1,000 companies, correlated them against these different business outcomes, financial returns, human capital returns, and growth and innovation. And at the bottom of it all, it's all about trust. Is it that simple?
It is about that. It's really that simple, but getting trust is actually not a simple thing, because if you think about it, trust has to do with many things. For example, will people trust you if you bring them back in the pandemic too early? Right? We all think about how can we bring people back to the company? How do we keep people safe? Well, that has to do with trust. The tools that you have, the technology you have, is AI, for example, trustworthy? All of these things go back to trust. Inspiring trust is actually it sounds simple, but it's not an easy thing to do. It takes years and takes you to think about all of your practices, IT practices, HR practices, leadership practices, because how you really behave towards your people can inspire trust or erode trust.
Well, Kathi, of course, it's fascinating to hear all that because trust touches almost everything in business and in HR and technology. But there was another set of findings that had to do with really the data side of the employee experience and listening and hearing and using information. Tell us about the findings relative to analytics and listening to employees.
Yeah, listening was really one of the most impactful things when we looked at technology and service practices of HR and IT across all of these dimensions like trust and management and workplace and all of those. So when we studied what technology and services practices have the biggest impact on all these outcomes that we identified, like financial performance and customer satisfaction and being a best place to work and innovation outcomes, by far, advanced people analytics and action taking had the biggest impact. And what that tells us is you need to find the answers within your people, because your people will tell you where the barriers are to productivity, performance, health and well-being, growth, diversity and inclusion, all of those, and trust actually, to all of those things. The answers lie within your people, and they talk with you all the time. And it's upon us all to listen to that and respond to that. So people analytics and action taking was the most impactful thing. And we see that actually across many of our studies. We see that whatever topic we study, that listening to your people and then taking action on these insights really matters most.
Great. So now along the lines of how companies can get started, if you look at the framework, which we'll just show you, you can see all of the different areas of the 6 major areas and the multiple sub areas in there. But of course, you can't work on 80 things at the same time. So you have to start somewhere. So we built a scorecard or an assessment so you can determine your highest priority areas. Kathi, can you tell everybody a little bit about the scorecard and how it works?
Yeah, of course. So the scorecard and this assessment really uses the same survey that we use to collect all these insights and analyze all these insights that all these 1,000 organizations completed. So you'll go, when you take this assessment, you'll go on behalf of your company, you go through 83 questions that ask you about things like, how do you make work meaningful? What's your management like? What's your physical and digital and cultural workplace like? How do you foster health and well-being, and on and on and on? So you go on behalf of your company through these 83 questions, and you might have to collaborate with somebody. So if you're in HR, you probably have to work with IT, because we also ask you about technology practices. If you're in IT, you probably have to work with somebody in HR, because they might have the better answers for what your company overall does on all these more HR and leadership related practices. So once you've gone through this, it takes about 15, 20 minutes to go through this really detailed and in-depth assessment. Then you'll get, at the end of that, you get a couple of things as an output. So you get where you are on a 4-level maturity journey. And we identified 4 different levels of maturity and employee experience based on this survey, all the way from, like, the least impactful is level 1. We call that transactional efficiency. Those are the companies that see really the employee and employer relationship more as a transactional relationship where people exchange work for money. But then when you go to level 2, you go to this more supportive environment. We call that supportive environment, where people help each other, they trust leaders, and people really are inspired to help each other. When you add a business focus to it and a mission first focus to it, we call that level 3 purpose-driven business. And then at the highest level, the most successful companies are those that do all the lower level things, but they also add a focus on what we call equitable growth. So everybody can grow there. Everybody can learn from mistakes, regardless where you're at. We provide learning opportunities, development opportunities for anybody in the organization. So it gives you this, once you go through this assessment, it gives you where you're at in this 4-level maturity model. So it tells you your company is at level 2, for example. And then it tells you what are your strengths, what are your top priorities that you need to continue to foster on? And what are your weakest areas of all of these 83? Where do you need to move up in the maturity? And also gives you some suggestions on how you can develop and grow as an organization. And then also the same thing it does for your technology practices. That's where also the Microsoft Viva product comes in, where it tells you, for example, you're really strong maybe on your employee portal, but you're not so good at people analytics. And what can you do to maybe foster your and improve your people analytics capabilities? So that's kind of gives you really where to start and how to get started on employee experience.
We have put together some fantastic resources to help you with employee experience in your companies. The research report, which you can read through and really understand all these findings. The second is a launch point for the assessment, so you can take the assessment and use the assessment to identify the areas of EX that are most important for your company. And the third is a unique report we developed with Microsoft in knowledge management, because one of the biggest issues in the employee experience is finding information, finding people, getting the right topics indexed so that your information systems work well together. And these resources hopefully will help you advance your employee experience program. And for us, please reach out to us at any time. Our website is www.joshbersin.com, one word, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
To sum it up, we know that employee experience can be a really broad and complex field, but if you take our assessment, it really gives you a great opportunity to get started and create that irresistible experience for your employees. Thank you.